Hello and welcome back to Off the Post. In today's episode, I'll be reacting to my Premier League predictions. But before that, as always, please like, comment, and subscribe. It's very much appreciated, and it goes along with helping me build a small community on my channel. We've recently just hit 324 subscribers. We're on our way to my main target, 500. Can we go and smash it? Hopefully we can. Just want to say a massive thank you for the recent support on our most recent episodes, all the likes and the comments on social media as well. Definitely go noticed, but let's get straight into the episode, shall we? Now, when we discuss my 20th position that I predicted to finish in the Premier League, it was actually Burnley, okay? But they actually did finish in 19th place, didn't they? So I did sort of get it correct. Then again, there's only one space in between. And for me, when I just discussed their transfer business, their recruitment, I just didn't think it was up to scratch. I just didn't think it was great enough to get them sort of surviving in the Premier League. Don't get me wrong. When we look at some of their players throughout the season, they had a few standout names that did okay, but it just wasn't good enough to sort of keep Scott Parker's men in the league. Let's just see back what I discussed at the start of the season, okay? They haven't really signed any Premier League experience for me. They haven't signed enough. Obviously, they've got Kyle Walker in there, who is a fantastic right back on his day. But again, at the age of 35, will he be able to, keep up with the pace of the Premier League? I'm not too sure. We've seen it last season for Man City. He was losing his legs a little bit, and that's why he got his move to AC Milan on loan. So we'll have to wait and see whether or not he can do it in the Premier League still. Don't get me wrong, he probably can do it, but when you've got him and a few other defenders in defence, I'm not too sure if that's enough. Okay, looking back at this, obviously they lost James Trafford, which was a massive loss for them. In the Championship last season, he had a breakout season, didn't he? And also with Man City this season, he's actually come good in the cup competitions, helping them get 2 cup competitions over the line in the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, I'm pretty sure as well. The likes of, the Chelsea midfielder, the French Chelsea midfielder, he actually came in and looked decent throughout the season. He was solid-ish, wasn't he, throughout some games that Burnley did win. Who else was there? There was a striker called, I think his name was Zach Fleming, the Dutch striker. I'm pretty sure he scored like 11 goals in total, and for me, he was quite surprising. I didn't really know much about him, but he sort of come in and did pretty decent for Burnley, especially when they had the likes of Brozier not really stepping up to the mark either. And there was even conversations of Zach Fleming sort of, being called up to that Dutch national squad for the World Cup, but unfortunately he did miss out. There was a bit of a running joke, like Ronald Koeman didn't even know who he was. I don't know how true that was, but anyways, let's move on to the 19th place. I predicted Wolverhampton Wanderers to be 19th, but they actually finished in 20th place, okay? Bottom of the Premier League table. Who would have thought that at the start of the season? Don't get me wrong, I did predict them to get relegated. However, I just didn't see it being this bad. Rock bottom. They couldn't win a game like the whole season, could they? They went on a massive losing streak, and they were just been awful all season. Okay, you got to think to yourself, the players throughout the whole season, they just weren't good enough, were they? They had a few players in the likes of like Portuguese midfielder called Mane. He was pretty good. He had a few breakout moments in the Premier League, and I feel like he'll be one that a Premier League club will pick up in the future. Maybe next season as well, like a Brighton, a Newcastle, and Everton, someone like that. When we discuss the faults of Wolverhampton Wanderers, obviously they lost Matthias Cunha, losing all their goals at the start of the season, of course. They lost Yait Nori as well. He was very good attacking wise. It would help out attacking players going forward, but it just wasn't really good enough defensively. And we've seen that now at Manchester City. But even Matthias Cunha, he scored a lot of goals for Wolverhampton Wanderers, wasn't he? And you've seen it at Manchester United now. Him doing the surfing celebration. Honestly, he's been really good for Manchester United. But anyways, moving over to my number 18th position, I predicted Brentford to finish 18th, and they actually finished in 9th place, okay, didn't they, Brentford? So for me, it was quite of a surprise, wasn't it? I did not expect this to happen at the start of the season. When we discussed some of the players they lost at the start of the season, including their manager Thomas Frank as well, you got to think to yourself, okay, this is why I thought they would have got relegated. I just didn't think they'd have enough at their disposal. Losing the likes of, Wizza, losing other players in there as well. I didn't really see it. Where the goals were going to come from. Let's bring back to what I said at the start of the season. Okay, for me, they've lost 3 influential players in Embremo, Ben Mee, and Norgard. For me, they've lost their goals, they've lost their defensive capabilities, and they've also lost Thomas Frank, who probably is the most important person out of the 4 people in total because it's their manager. We've seen Brentford's model over their Premier League campaign, okay, where they lose 1 or 2 players here and there, and they always manage to bounce back. They always manage to recruit well and all that sort of good stuff. However, they're losing their manager now, and when you're bringing in Keith Andrews to replace him, we just don't really know much about Keith Andrews, do we? Continue with the fact that they lost Thomas Frank, the manager that's been there since the Championship days, since him like evolving that Brentford squad year in year out, bringing in players to sort of come in and come good for them. They always have this transfer model of buying young players and then selling them on. For me, I just thought this season it wouldn't have worked. Obviously, losing the main goal threat in Wizard, okay, to Newcastle for like 50 million. When you look back at that transfer deal, you got to think to yourself, that's actually a bit of a steal now. Brentford have actually done some crazy business, so they must have done some absolute magic on that Newcastle transfer, because 50 million for him, even though he's had a bad season, is great business for them. But however, I never expected their main player, Igor Thiago, the Brazilian striker, to come in and score 20 plus goals in this season, okay? He's absolutely saved Brentford this season, and that's why they finished 9th in the Premier League. They were in the conversations of competing for European competitions, whether that was Conference League, Europa League. A lot of fans thought they were going to get that. It was unfortunate not to just sort of miss out on them, but also Keith Andrews coming in as his first season as a manager in the Premier League. Honestly, fantastic. He honestly wasn't he, the manager? I just did not expect him to be as good as he was. Okay, moving over now to my 17th place, I had Leeds United, and they actually finished in 14th place, okay, didn't they? So from that point of view, they finished, 3 places ahead of what I expected them to finish. And for me, overall this season, they have been fantastic, haven't they, really? Some of their players in, Noah Okafor, Dominic Calvin-Lewin, Tananka, Ethan Ampadu, they've been absolutely vital, essential to why Leeds United have stayed up. I feel like they made some good business. Obviously Dominic Calvin-Lewin, he's a proven Premier League striker, but at Everton the last few seasons it didn't really work out for him. He had a few injuries here and there. For me, the main problem with Leeds United probably would have been their defence. Don't get me wrong. They've proved to themselves that they can fight hard. They can stay in games. Halfway through this season, a game against Manchester United at Old Trafford, I'm pretty sure they got that victory, didn't they? Or they got a draw, got a great result against Manchester United. Either way, they're rivals, and that sort of spurred me on to believe that they can stay in the Premier League. And Dominic Calvin-Lewin scoring all these goals for his side, has proven, to all the Premier League fans that he can still do it. He's still capable of it. And there's a whole conversation where he probably should have been that 3rd choice or 2nd choice striker for England, and he was a little bit unfortunate to miss out to Ivan Toney. For me, I honestly do believe that Dominic Calvin-Lewin probably should have been in there. And I've done quite a few videos on Leeds United this season, and every time I've done one, it's always been a positive result. They've either got a draw or a victory against these big teams, so they've surprised me this season, Leeds United. Right, then moving over to my number 16th place, I predicted Sunderland to finish in 16th. However, they actually finished in 7th. One of the dark horses of the season, and that's what I predicted at the start of the season. With all the transfers they brought in, spending 100 plus million on these players, bringing in 10 plus players, and some marquee signings in there as well, like the likes of Granit Xhaka, Brian Brobby, Chelmsdale, Talby, Mukalele, Robin Roofs, all these types of players, marquee signings for Sunderland, and to finish in 7th place in your first season back in the Premier League was absolutely exceptional. I can't praise the manager enough. I can't praise the squad enough. And for me, they're in, they're in Europa League now, aren't they? But I'm pretty sure. Or so for me, you've got to say to yourself, can they actually go and win it? Potentially they can. If they can bring in some more players to improve the overall quality of that squad, I generally do believe Sunderland have a great chance of doing this once again. But let's just move over now to my 15th place position. I predicted West Ham to finish 15th, but they actually finished in 18th place, and they were one of the main teams that got relegated. For me, I was so shocked when I seen them being in a relegation battle. However, they've had so many different managers this season, at least 2 or 3 managers, and it's just not worked out for whatever reason. it's crazy to see, just because obviously, you know, they weren't playing great football, were they? Their defence has been absolutely shambles throughout the whole season. Yes, they've had one or two bright shining spells in Malak Diouf, in Matthias Fernandes, in Jared Bowen, Callum Wilson. For a few game weeks, he sort of showed up for a few game weeks here and there, but again, ultimately, it just didn't matter. And for me, they're a massive club, and to be playing in that, what, 50, 60,000 capacity stadium, the London Stadium, for have them now playing in the Championship against some of their, rivals like Millwall, that'd be a decent game, wouldn't it, for the Millwall fans. But again, I would never, West Ham are a staple of the Premier League, aren't they? With West Ham getting relegated now, you've also got to consider the players they are going to lose in the summer. Jared Bowen is good enough to be a Premier League player. He's good enough to be a top six Premier League player for me, at least, anyways. It's whether or not a top six, big six club will go in for him or not. I'm not too sure. If not, maybe he might stay in the Championship, try and get West Ham back promoted to the big times, to the Premier League. There's also Matthias Fernandes as well. He's been heavily rumoured to join the likes of Manchester United, PSG, Bayern Munich, all these big clubs. For me, I feel like Matthias Fernandes, he's a fantastic player. When you watch him on the ball, he can make moments of magic. He can light up the Premier League like he's done throughout the season with West Ham, trying to keep them in the league, but unfortunately for them, they just couldn't do it. But anyways, let's move over to one 14th place. I predicted Fulham to finish 14th, but they actually finished in 11th. So for me, this season, it's a bit of a weird one for Fulham, because they've not really had any moments where I've sort of, been impressed by them, to be completely honest. They've had a weird season. They've just had a very, steady season, haven't they, Fulham? But anyways, let's check out what I said at the start of the season, okay? It's very disappointing in the sense of, they haven't really signed that many players of note as of yet. They've been linked with the Chelsea duo in Raheem Sterling and Kieran Dewsbury-Hall. So for me, if they get them two over the line, that'll be very decent to sort of add that bit more squad depth into their squad. And yeah, when you speak about Fulham's transfer business, they do like to sign those sort of misfit players in the Premier League from Premier League clubs, don't they? In the likes of, Alex Iwobi, Pereira, Emil Smith-Rowe, all these types of players, Reece Nelson, all these types of players. And if you add those two into the mix in Raheem Sterling and Kieran Dewsbury-Hall, I definitely do think that does improve their overall squad, and I think 14th is a decent position for Fulham, isn't it? They're sort of a mid-table side that, aren't going to challenge for those Europa League positions, but aren't going to get relegated either. So yeah, after listening to that, I probably was a little bit incorrect. I probably was wrong. Fulham, they do have a good squad at their disposal. Fantastic players. Raul Jimenez, Emil Smith-Rowe, Iwobi, all these types of players. Harry Wilson having an impressive season. I did not expect him to do as good as he actually has done this season. Of course, now he's going to go on a free contract, so you got to think to yourself, he's been heavily rumoured to join the likes of Aston Villa. Will that deal actually go through now, with, finishing in Champions League positions and whatnot? I'm not too sure. Maybe he might go to like another team in there, maybe like a Newcastle, Everton, or he might just start at Fulham. I don't know. Maybe he might. I'm not too sure what's going to happen with Harry Wilson. Let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, for me, Fulham have had a steady season. They've been slightly, boring-ish. I'm not too sure. But now with the news that Marco Silva is potentially going to join Benfica as their new head coach in La Liga Portugal, you got to think to yourself now, what's going to happen to them? Who's their new manager going to be? Will some of the players actually want to leave under the new head coach? We're not too sure. Right, moving over now to my 13th place. I predicted Everton to finish 13th, and they actually finished in 13th. So this is the first one that I actually got correct. Maybe I'm actually half decent at this sort of stuff. Let me know in the comments down below. Yeah, probably not. But just to say, David Moyes, for me, Everton this season, they made some great transfers, didn't they? They brought in some good players for the future. Kieran Dewsbury-Hall, Jack Grealish, Ferran Barry. He's a bit raw, but he has scored a few goals here and there. I do like what David Moyes is building at Everton. Obviously, being in their new stadium for the first time this season, for me, they've had a good season overall. I have enjoyed watching them. It was a little bit unfortunate that Jack Grealish did get injured, because when he was, when he was fully fit, he was impacting a lot of the games. He was very effective, wasn't he, Jack Grealish, getting some few goals, more assists, as well to sort of help, Endoy, to help Beto, to help Kieran Dewsbury Hall, who'd sort of play that number 10, number 8 position. For me, I like him a little bit further forward, to be honest, in that number 10 position. But, they've always got a solid defence, don't they, Everton? For me, obviously they've lost a lot of Seamus Coleman now. He had his testimonial a few weeks ago, just before the season ended, and it was a little bit disappointing that all Everton fans sort of left the stadium. It did look a little bit empty, so it was a little bit unfortunate. He's been a long servant at Everton, hasn't he, Seamus Coleman? But it is here and there. Hopefully he probably won't care, to be honest. We'll have to wait and see. Now, starting off in my 12th position, I had Crystal Palace finishing 12th, and they actually finished in 15th place. Okay, for me, of course, okay, they finished 3 places below what I expected, but they did go on and win the Conference League, didn't they? The European Conference League. They went on and won another trophy this season, okay, under Glasner. And for me, when he potentially can be leaving in the summer, that is a good way how to leave. Let's send it back to at the start of the season. My predictions, why I thought they'd finish 12th. Okay, there is some reasoning behind this because they are in the Conference League, aren't they? So they're gonna have to play, Wednesdays, the Fridays, the Thursdays, the Saturdays, all this sort of good stuff. And, they did get demoted from the Europa League into the Conference League, which is a little bit of a shame for them because they definitely did deserve to play in the Europa League. But I really do feel like now Crystal Palace are main favourites to win the Conference League. When you think about some of their teams in the Conference League, there's not many big names. There's not many big clubs compared to last season, at least, anyways. So I feel like, Oliver Glasner will put all of his eggs in one basket and potentially try and win that competition because he's definitely got experience. Right then, so in saying that, when we discuss Crystal Palace, it always feels like they do finish 12th every single season, so that's why I put them in there, in that position. However, finishing 3 places below and winning the Conference League, that is probably a better season overall, isn't it, than just finishing 12th, just because you got to think to yourself, Crystal Palace in these recent seasons under Oliver Glasner have been absolutely exceptional. They've changed. That manager has changed their fortunes around. We'll have to wait and see if he stays or not. If he does go, I'm not too sure. But you got to think to yourself, under this ownership, under this new management, maybe potentially, maybe they can do some good things again next season. But anyways, moving over now to my 11th place, I predicted Bournemouth to finish 11th, but they actually finished in 6th place. They got Europa League football finishing in the top 6. For me, this was probably one of the unexpected ones of the season. Okay, I just did not expect this to happen whatsoever. For me, at the start of the season, when you think about some of the players that they lost in their defence, Dean Huijsen, Kerkez, the Ukrainian centre back, I just didn't expect this to be the case whatsoever. But for me, they've been absolutely exceptional under Areola. Okay, for me, he's one of the managers of the season. I absolutely love watching Bournemouth this season. I love watching them because they're fantastic. They compete in every single game, and that's what they've done this season. Finishing in the top 6 with the squad they've got available to them is absolutely amazing. For me, some of the players that they brought in, some of the youth players playing exceptionally well, okay, in the likes of Junior Krupa getting 11 goals this season, the Brazilian winger Ryan coming in from obviously the Brazilian league and lining it up. He looks like the second coming of Gareth Bale. He's so strong, so fast. His dribbling ability is second to none. He can score as well. Honestly, he looks frightening, and he's also been called up to the World Cup squad for Brazil. Fantastic breakout season in the Premier League. I can see him getting a big money move. If he has a good World Cup, I can see him getting a big money move. And he's only been at the club for 6 months. He probably will stay, and for his development, it probably is better that he does stay for a full season. But still, also the likes of Alex Scott as well, missing out on those, that England squad, a little bit unfortunate. I think he is going to be in that England camp at least as well with a few other young players. But Bournemouth to get top 6 next season will be absolutely amazing, and it's whether or not they'll be able to keep up that same momentum. But anyway, let's move on now to top 10. I thought Brighton would finish in that number 10th position, okay, but they actually finished in 8th position. They finished in 8th, so 2 places above what I predicted. And Brighton this season, they've had a good season overall, haven't they? Don't get me wrong, they've looked a little bit iffy here and there, a little bit hard to predict sometimes with Brighton, just because you don't know how well they actually are going to be. But that young manager is absolutely exceptional, the German manager. for me, he's got a big career in this game, hasn't he? He can definitely kick on in a few seasons' time. Danny Welbeck has had a season of his career. At one point he was the highest English top goal scorer in the Premier League, wasn't he? With like 12 goals, absolutely exceptional. It was a little bit unfortunate he didn't get called up for the World Cup either, but you got to think to yourself, the other two players in Ollie Watkins and Ivan Toney is probably a better fit for what England need and what Thomas Tuchel will want. And other players in there as well. Carlos Baleba this season hasn't really been that great. Nobody's really spoke about him that much. He's had a little bit of a fall off. He was quoted to go for like 100 million to Manchester United in the summer transfer window last season. I don't know if he hit that. I don't know whether he will be. I don't know whether he'll be leaving in the summer. Let me know in the comments down below, Brighton fans. What do you need to? What do you need? What players do you need to bring in to almost boost your chances for European football? Are you happy where you finished in the season? Right, let's move on now to my ninth position. I actually predicted Nottingham Forest to finish in ninth. However, they finished in 16th place. Okay, in Nottingham Forest, they've had an abysmal season throughout the whole year. Okay, truly disappointing, haven't they? They've had 3 managers throughout this time period, and each one of them couldn't get a tune out of the players. Don't get me wrong, they've done a good job of staying in the league, finishing 16th place. The likes of obviously Morgan Gibbs-White, Elliot Anderson, Chris Wood coming in here and there when he was back fit. Igor Jesus sort of coming in, being all right as well. Right, and I couldn't have been even more wrong, could I, when I predicted the Nottingham Forest to finish in ninth. They finished in 16th place. Honestly, they were absolutely terrible. Having 3 managers throughout the season, not one of them could get a tune out of them. And for me, I think now, obviously, they've got a big squad at their disposal, but when we discuss their main key players in Elliot Anderson and Morgan Gibbs-White, generally I think those two are off. I think they're going to leave at the start of the summer transfer window. I could see them both leaving for at least 100 million combined. I feel like Elliot Anderson alone would be 100 million, and then Gibbs-White probably 60 plus million at least. For me, Morgan Gibbs-White, there was a few game weeks where he sort of turned up really good, wouldn't he? I think he scored a hat trick in one game week. He was going crazy. In the Europa League as well, getting to the semi-final in the Europa League is definitely, something to shout about. Obviously, losing to Aston Villa, got battered by Aston Villa, might I add, was a little bit unfortunate for Nottingham Forest, but at the same time, for me, it's just a bit of a weird one. Under the new manager Pereira, they have looked very good. They have looked better. They have looked back to their best. And for next season, I feel like if they can bring in some more players to sort of replace the players that they might lose, I feel like they will have another comfortable-ish season like they had the season before last. Moving over now to my number 8th position, I have Manchester United in 8th. However, they actually finished in 3rd place. For me, again, I thought they would improve upon last season, obviously finishing 15th, which they sort of did do. And obviously now under the likes of Ruben Amorim, I generally did think they would have improved slightly. I didn't think they would be finishing in the top 3. I honestly didn't think that. I feel like Ruben Amorim, I think if they was still under Ruben Amorim, they were on course to finish 8th, so I could have got this one right. Because with the 2 signings of Matheus Cunha and Brian Bremo, I really do feel like they found Premier League proven talent that are going to score on the goals at last. They finally found it, haven't they? And don't get me wrong, I feel like they're going to potentially get the likes of Højlund and Sergi scoring the goals, added with the likes of Bruno Fernandes, Mason Mount. They actually do have some good attacking talent in there. It's just whether or not the defence can sort of match with the midfielders and forwards. But obviously, under Michael Carrick now, they've been transformed, haven't they, this season, and they've done such a fantastic job to finish in 3rd place. Obviously, Bruno Fernandes breaking the assist record with 21 assists, bringing back in Kobbie Mainoo to sort of come in into that midfield has been pretty, he's an exceptional player. Kobbie Mainoo, he's fantastic going forward. He's fantastic defensively. It was just so silly to see Ruben Amorim not playing, to keep on benching him. I just didn't understand it. A lot of rival fans have said Michael Carrick has just put the players in the right positions, and you could argue he's done that, but still you've got to get the tune out of those players, and he's done that. The feel-good factor is there for Manchester United to finish 3rd, and I generally do feel like now, with some more marquee signings, I've said it quite a few times in this video, but if they can bring in some more better players to improve that overall quality of the squad, I generally feel like they can challenge with the likes of Arsenal, who won the Premier League this season. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree or disagree. But anyway, moving on now to my number 7th place, I predicted Newcastle to finish in 7th, but they actually finished in 12th position. They've had a massive, massive drop off this season after playing Newcastle United. I generally just don't know why they've been so dreadful. Maybe this is the last hurrah for Eddie Howe. Let me know in the comments down below if you feel like Eddie Howe has taken Newcastle as far as he can. I generally did believe Newcastle were going to be challenging for those European positions again. Europa League, Champions League. They've done it quite a few times this season. But again, when we look at their transfer business, every single one of those players have been an absolute miss for me. Don't get me wrong, they've had one or two in the likes of Nick Fortamado. He's been all right. He came in, he started looking very good. He was looking like the German Peter Crouch. He went on a decent goal scoring run, didn't he, at the start of the season, but he had a massive, massive drop off at the end of the season. Wissa has been absolutely terrible. Jacob Ramsey's not really played that much, and when he has, he's not really looked that great. He's not really been that effective. And when we think about some of the players that they might lose, Anthony Elanga as well, I didn't even mention him, but for me, I was predicting him to be having a great season, but he's been terrible, hasn't he? And when we think about some of the players they're going to lose in the summer, obviously Anthony Gordon has joined Barcelona already. Joined Barcelona for 80 million. Absolutely exceptional business from Newcastle. For me, Anthony Gordon, he's a good player. He's definitely not an elite player. He doesn't really show up in the big games, but again, Barcelona have one or two big games in the league. So for me, I feel like Anthony Gordon will have a good season in La Liga, but they're potentially going to lose some more players in Sandro Tonali, in Bruno Guimaraes, maybe a Lewis Hall they might lose. They've got these teams in the likes of the mid-table teams always have to sell their big names to sort of make sure that they have the financial fair play. They keep in financial fair play regulations, don't they? So right, let's move over to the top 6, and I had Aston Villa finishing in the top 6, okay, but they actually finished in 4th place and won the Europa League. They're champions of Europe. Absolutely amazing season for Unai Emery's team. Honestly, throughout the season, right, definitely, don't get me wrong, it started off quite dodgy, not really winning in the first 5, not really scoring that many goals either. It was looking a bit, shabby, if you like, but obviously Unai Emery got the players together and managed to having a fantastic season. There was games where they went on a 10-game winning run, didn't lose for 10 games. Absolutely fantastic for them. And don't get me wrong, they've been a little bit ups and downs throughout the season. There've been a few tricky spells where it hasn't been great, but throughout the whole games, throughout the whole 38 game weeks, Unai Emery has got it together and finished in 4th place. That means they've got Champions League football next season. They've run the Europa League, and generally, honestly, so that Europa League run, okay, was absolutely exceptional. Beating Nottingham Forest 4-1 in the semi-finals was amazing. Playing Freiburg, beating them 3-0 in the final, with the likes of, Yuri Tillemans scoring a fantastic half volley, Emi Buendia scoring a fantastic, worldie outside the box curling shot, and then Morgan Rogers, Aston Villa star man. For me, next season, Aston Villa, they've got to get the signings right. I feel like it depends on who they lose, depends on who they can bring in. For me, I feel like they do need another potential right back in there, another midfielder, and another winger. Maybe if we get 4 players, another striker. Tammy Abraham, he has looked decent for me. I do like Tammy Abraham. There's been a few links saying that he might be off. I don't think he will leave in the summer, just because he's only been there 6 months. Moving over to our top 5, I had Tottenham finishing 5th, but they actually finished in 17th place in the Premier League. Let's bring it back to what I said at the start of the season. Okay, why I thought they'd finish in the top 5. Equipment they've made in the likes of Kudus, right? I feel like he's a perfect player to sort of take them to the next level and bring them back up to, fighting into those Champions League positions. Don't get me wrong, they are in the Champions League themselves, so I do feel like Thomas Frank will sort of want to test himself and sort of try and get out of the group stages. I don't know whether they'll get further than the group stages, so that's probably where they'll try and find their feet in the Premier League and go again and sort of compete for the Champions League once again this season. I feel like Solanke's going to score bigger goals this season. Discussing that, I couldn't have been even more wrong, could I? Obviously, I thought, under Thomas Frank, they'd have the players available to them. They had some great players, had some good signings. Obviously the likes of James Maddison, Kulusevski, Kudus. They had Solanke available to them. Carlo Mulwani, Xavi Simons. I thought their recruitment was actually half decent. However, with all the injuries they've had at their disposal, they've had so many injuries this season, and the squad players, the bench players, the reserve players coming into that team just weren't good enough whatsoever. Christian Romero getting sent off pretty much every other game. Mickey van der Ven not really being as great as he used to be this season. The defence has been a shambles. The midfield just gets ran through. Losing Thomas Frank, Igor Tidor coming in, didn't really look that great, both of those managers. Now we're under Roberto De Zerbi. For me, I feel like they will be better with some more signings. Hopefully, with the players they can get back fit as well, sort of getting rid of some of the deadwood. Hopefully, they can have a top 10 finish next season. That's where I believe Tottenham Hotspur can finish. Moving over to position number 4, top 4 now. I predicted Chelsea to finish in 4th, but they actually finished in 10th place. An abysmal season for Chelsea. Obviously, started the season with Enzo Maresca in there, but they were terrible, weren't they? You know what I mean? For whatever reason, they couldn't get a player under Enzo Maresca. He eventually gets sacked, didn't they? And then obviously Liam Rosenior sort of comes in. Coming from Strasbourg in League One, you got to think to yourself, he's an upcoming manager, but at the same time, he's not really been tested at the highest levels. Why would you bring in a manager that's only managed in League One? Don't get me wrong, he sort of became a meme, didn't he, eventually, didn't he? Some of the stuff he was coming out in the press conferences, some of the stuff he was coming out with in the press conferences, some of the stuff he was speaking to with his players, right, you could quite clearly see that the players did not respect Liam Rosenior whatsoever, and he ultimately got sacked. And then they was left with a caretaker manager, and it was the season almost just petered out. At the point where Liam Rosenior was at, he pretty much couldn't do anything about it to sort of get Chelsea into those top 4, top 6 positions, and ultimately the players this season they haven't been good enough, have they? For Chelsea, there've been a few bright spells with the likes of Reece James and Enzo Fernandez. Caicedo's been okay. Cucurella, they've got a few, like 4 or 5 good players around them, but they need the spine, don't they? Their centre backs aren't good enough. The strikers, yes, João Pedro. I like João Pedro, but is he top 10 striker in the Premier League? I just don't think so. Liam Delap as well, sort of come in, has not really done anything. Cole Palmer has had a terrible season, to be completely honest with you. For me, he's probably had his worst season at Chelsea in the Premier League as well. He's had a few injuries here and there, not being called up for England as well. Probably is a very indictment into how bad he's actually been. But anyways, let's move over to the top 3. I had Man City finishing in 3rd, but they finished in 2nd in the Premier League this season. For me, Man City, again, it's been a bit of a transitional time for them under Pep Guardiola. For me, they have been competing for that, Premier League once again, but it's probably been their worst season for Manchester City. They just couldn't keep up with Arsenal, could they? Don't get me wrong. Of course, you got to think to yourself, there was times where there was like 9 points behind Arsenal in the Premier League. They've had a few bright spells in the Premier League this season. Ryan Cherky, Antonio Semenyo, Haaland, Margehi as well coming in. They've got a few players that can spur them on. But for me, when we speak about Man City, now that Pep Guardiola's left at the start of now that Pep Guardiola's left at the end of the season, obviously potentially bringing in Enzo Maresca, what's going to happen to them? Are they going to have the almost, Sir Alex Ferguson, David Moyes effect? We'll have to wait and see. Don't get me wrong as well. They're going to have money to spend in the summer. It's just whether or not they're going to bring in the right players, because their recruitment in the last 2 or 3 seasons hasn't been good enough. But let's move over now to number 2nd position. I predicted Arsenal to finish in 2nd. However, they finished in 1st and they actually won the Premier League for the first time in 2 decades. For me, they've been absolutely exceptional this season. Don't get me wrong, there's been a lot of rival fans saying to themselves, now, okay, they've been setting up very defensively under Mikel Arteta, but will they care? They've won the Premier League for the first time in 2 decades. Honestly, I just don't think they will. Let me take it back to what I said at the start of the season. They have to finish in 2nd place. They're going to do it again. I feel like they've finished 2nd place for the last 2 or 3 seasons now, haven't they? I don't know why, but for whatever reason, they just can't get over the line, can they? And the major factor for that reason would be, having a striker not scoring them goals. They haven't, they need a 20-goal season striker, and they've finally signed Gyökeres, haven't they? The Swedish striker from Sporting Lisbon has finally come in, and I really do feel like he's going to score them the goals. However, I don't know if they're going to score them enough goals to get them over the line to win the Premier League. Right, with that being said, okay, you've got to think to yourself, I generally did feel like there was other teams in contention that probably were going to be challenging for that Premier League title. However, Arsenal, don't get me wrong, they've been challenging with Man City, but the other team I thought they were going to be competing with in Liverpool just were absolutely abysmal, weren't they? So with that being said, Arsenal, okay, winning the Premier League, so many great set pieces throughout the league, so many players coming good in the likes of Declan Rice, Bukayo Saka, Victor Gyökeres, William Saliba, Gabriel, David Raya, all these players were the key reasons why they won the Premier League. And also to get to a Champions League final, losing on penalties 4-3 to PSG was a little bit unfortunate. Like I've said, I've already done a previous video on that, so I won't go into too much detail. But, at the end of the day, Arsenal fans, this season will be absolutely a fantastic for them. It's just unfortunate that they couldn't go on and win the Champions League. But when we talk about next season, I feel like they're going to be front runners again to win the Premier League title. I just don't see who else is going to challenge, except from the likes of maybe Manchester United. Let me know in the comments down below who you think can challenge for Arsenal, with Arsenal, sorry. But moving on now to my number one position, I predicted Liverpool to finish first, to go back-to-back champions in the Premier League. However, they actually finished in 5th place. I couldn't have been more wrong, could I? That's 4 places below where they actually finished, where I thought they'd finished, sorry. And they've been terrible. Spending 500 million with all the transfers they brought in, I generally thought they would be front runners to win that Premier League. But they just, I couldn't be further from the truth, could it? Let's take you back to what I said at the start of the season. Who are going to win the Premier League this season? Who are going to become Premier League champions? And for me, it has to be Liverpool once again. They're going to win consecutive Premier League titles, back-to-back trophies, okay? Now, for me, when you think about Liverpool's recruitment business in this transfer window, it's been absolutely obscene, okay? Liverpool have gone out and pretty much guaranteed they're going to win back-to-back Premier Leagues from the players they've signed. They've spent 267 million in the transfer window on about 5 or 6 players, I'm pretty sure. And they're still trying to sign more players in the likes of Alexander Isak, but we'll mention that in a minute, okay? When you think about some of the signings they've made in the likes of Jeremy Frimpong, Kerkez, Mandevskvilia, the goalkeeper from Valencia, they've signed Hugo Ekitike, and not forgetting Flivian Wirtz, the record-breaking signing in the Premier League history, okay, for, 135 million or something like that. Absolutely incredible piece of business from Liverpool, okay? For me, I really do feel like Liverpool are going to build a legacy in the Premier League where they're going to be the main team that's going to dominate for years to come. Right, with that being said, like I just mentioned earlier, them spending 500 million on the likes of all these types of players, Alexander Isak, Flivian Wirtz, all these players, the goalkeeper, a few centre-backs as well. I generally did feel like they would be absolutely fine front runners to be winning that, Premier League. However, to have a massive drop off under Arne Slot, the players not really competing for the badge, not being able to do what the manager has asked of them, and for him now to get sacked and potentially bringing in the likes of Iriola from Bournemouth, it looks like he's going to be the main front runner to join, Liverpool in the summer. For me, I've liked watching what Iriola has done for Bournemouth since he's joined 2 or 3 seasons ago. We get, like I mentioned earlier, Bournemouth getting top 6 now. I think he's a good manager. However, it's going to be a massive step up from joining Bournemouth to Liverpool. The competition, we've seen it under Arne Slot. Liverpool are expected to win game in, game out every single weekend, so I don't know if Iriola is the right man for the job. Time will only tell. Hopefully now, with a few more transfers under their belt, they could potentially do the job. I'm not too sure. Let me know in the comments down below if you feel like Iriola is the right man for the job, and where's the highest position Liverpool can finish next season. Is it top 4? Is it challenging for the league? Let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, this was a long video, I must admit, but the other one was like, 41 minutes long as well. Right, to end the video off, this was my pre-season predictions, okay, for the Premier League, and this was the actual Premier League table. I couldn't have been more wrong. I think I got 3 right in total, with Wolves Wolverhampton Wanderers and Burnley getting relegated, and Everton finishing 13th. Honestly, I thought my ball knowledge was top tier, but I guess it wasn't. Hopefully next season I can do a little bit better. So yeah, before that, as always, please like, comment, subscribe. It goes massively helping me build a small community on my channel. Recently just hit 324 subscribers. Well on our way to getting 500 subscribers. Can we go and smash it? And yeah, I really do hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.